Revenge with Karen. I knew I was about to be erased when Brandon, the CEO spray-tanned spawn with a vape in one hand and ego in the other, asked me what exactly it is I do around here. Not how I do it, not how well, just why I'm even on payroll. This, mind you, after 15 years of being the silent heartbeat behind a $30 million server infrastructure. I've worked Christmas Eves, recovered systems from ransomware attacks that would have nuked lesser firms, hand-fed our authentication network like it was some finicky feral cat. But that Thursday morning, while sipping a cup of gas station coffee and watching the clock tick toward 10 o'clock a.m., I heard Brandon laugh in the break room, telling some clueless intern, honestly, IT people are just like office plants. Decorative, replaceable, decorative. You ever feel your soul detach and float 5 feet above your body out of pure rage? That was me, but I didn't show it. Rage don't reboot servers. I just tightened my ponytail, adjusted my badge, and walked to the server room like I always did, unseen, unheard, but keeping this entire kingdom from crashing into oblivion. And since I got you here, hey, 97% of you just listen to these stories without hitting that lil subscribe button. Be a hero to the algorithm gods. Drop a like, tap subscribe. It actually keeps us breathing over here, keeps the lights on. Unlike what Brandon's about to do. Now where was I? Ah, yes, the daily rhythm. While the marketing team made memes and the execs argued over logo colors, I lived in the shadows of terminal windows and log files. You know what real power smells like? Ozone and burned plastic, because that's what hits your nostrils when a power supply dies at 2 a.m. and you're the one who has to resuscitate it. My official title was Senior Systems Administrator. Really, I was the last line of defense between smooth operations and digital anarchy. I maintained every certificate, every trust chain, every automated failover, and heartbeat monitor. I didn't ask for recognition. I didn't need my name on a plaque. I liked being the ghost in the machine. But that all started changing 3 months ago when Daddy's little disruption consultant arrived. Brandon stormed in fresh from some overpriced business school, reeking of entitlement and dollar store cologne, and was immediately installed as Chief Innovation Officer, whatever the hell that means. First week, he started purging legacy staff, claimed we were bloated. He walked around asking things like, why do we even have an internal server? And can't we just move everything to the cloud like Netflix? Netflix. I swear to God, if this man says AWS one more time like it's a magic word, I'm gonna bury his Apple Watch in thermal paste. He'd strut past my desk, glance at my dual monitors covered in code and uptime graphs, and say crap like, don't work too hard. We don't bill clients for Matrix cosplay. Then he'd finger-gun his reflection in the hallway glass and stroll off like he just solved world hunger. The CEO, to his credit, used to be a decent man. Back when we were a small outfit with duct-taped routers and budget ramen in the break room, he treated people like family. But now, he just nodded along, too tired or too rich to argue with his golden boy. And me, I kept doing my job, quietly, perfectly. While Brandon posed for LinkedIn selfies and fired anyone over 40, I was setting up silent audit logs, version-stamped backups, and a very specific set of conditional triggers tied to, well, get there? Point is, I knew the writing was on the wall. I could smell it. It smelled like Axe body spray and HR policy changes. So I did what any good sysadmin would do. I got ready. Because people like Brandon think power lives in job titles and corner offices. But real power, the kind that hums in the wires and pulses through server racks at midnight. That kind lives in the hands of the one person who knows what happens when you let the root certificate expire. Brandon's first week wasn't even over when Carol from finance, who'd been with the company since we were literally working out of a strip mall suite next to a vape shop, was suddenly escorted out mid-lunch with nothing but a sticky note over her Tupperware that said reorg. No handshake, no send-off, just her keycard deactivated and a confused intern taking over her desk before the chair got cold. That's when I knew this wasn't a transition, it was a purge. Moved fast, fired 2 project managers for energy mismatches, axed the head of facilities for having a print-first mindset. I heard him on a Zoom call say we needed to burn down the silos, which I guess meant firing anyone with actual experience, so he could install his band of tech bros and caffeine-deprived startup refugees. People who thought Jira tickets were beneath them, but would spend 3 hours redesigning the Slack emoji palette. And me, it was just the IT lady. He said that, in front of 12 directors. There we were in a leadership sink, and Brandon, sitting backwards in his chair like a motivational youth pastor, said, "Do we really need the IT lady in these meetings? No offense, but this stuff's more strategic than like resetting passwords and plugging in monitors." I didn't blink. I didn't defend myself. I just looked at the floor, then the projector clock. 11:14 a.m. Good. A timestamp would live forever in the access logs I was archiving under the folder name, just in case /Brandon torpedo plan, because I'd already started my backup campaign. Every change I ever made, every cert renewal, every patch schedule, master password chain, and infrastructure map. I downloaded every system diagram I ever drew by hand, snapshotted the cron jobs, copied my personal runbooks, saved the audit logs, layered everything into encrypted containers with timestamps, checksum hashes, and offsite redundancy. You don't work 15 years in IT without learning how to survive digital extinction events. He started calling emergency stand-ups, where he'd grill us on why we hadn't migrated our customer platform to some half-baked SaaS startup he had a gut feeling about. He started using words like synergy architecture and cloud-native pivot strategy like they were Pokemon attacks. But when he looked at me, it was always the same. "You still here?" He'd smirk. "I thought we could automate your job with a shell script." Funny, because the shell script I'd just written would nuke his access tree in under 5 seconds if triggered. Still, I smiled. I played the ghost. Because ghosts don't scream, they just haunt. Char started pushing around voluntary retirement incentive packets, code for take this cash and leave quietly before we brandon you. By the end of his second week, 10 people were gone. 10. Most of them knew where the bodies were buried, figuratively. Some literally, if you count that time, a junior dev accidentally took down our database by running a loop without a break condition. I covered that mess in an hour and never even got a thank you. Now this clown thought he could replace me with a Chrome extension and a dream. He didn't ask what I knew. He didn't ask what I managed. He just assumed the infrastructure kept running because tech just works, because it always had, because I made it so. I started locking down permissions, not to block anyone yet, but to make sure no one could screw up what I'd built. I scheduled redundancy checks, staggered backup scripts, verified that the root cert chain still terminated in my name. It did. I updated the expiration triggers on our certificate stack, tied them to my credentials. If no one renewed them, well, the platform would go dark at midnight. Not a shutdown, not a crash, just silence. Every system handshake met with a polite little access denied. And I didn't tell a soul, not because I was hiding, but because no one asked, not even when he renamed the IT channel in Slack to #tech support babes and tagged me in a meme of a grandma holding a Wi-Fi router like it was a bomb. I didn't respond. I just added another line to my private log. Brandon logged meeting 2 p.m. Tuesday mock ticketing system MP4 someday. Someone would want to know how this all happened. I wanted the receipts to sing. He held the town hall in the break room, because of course he did. Said something about flattening the hierarchy while standing under a crooked motivational poster that read teamwork makes the dream work, hung by someone who was now unemployed thanks to him. Brandon had a lav mic clipped to his fashionably distressed hoodie, like he was auditioning for Shark Tank. Half the company was crammed into the room. The other half watched from a Zoom call that started 15 minutes late because he'd unplugged the router trying to install his Bluetooth speaker. "Let's get real," he said, pacing like a TED Talk reject on Red Bull. "Nobody, and I mean nobody, is irreplaceable. We're building a culture of agility, not dependence. This isn't a family, folks, it's a machine. If one cog breaks, you replace it. Simple as that." There was a silence after that, the kind that sucks all the oxygen out of a room. People stared at their coffee cups. Someone coughed. And Brandon just grinned like he delivered Moses' 11th commandment. I didn't react, just stood at the back, arms crossed, staring through him. But I knew what was coming. You could feel it in the air like static before a lightning strike. An hour later, my Outlook calendar lit up with a mandatory HR review. No details, just a meeting ID and the dreaded subject line, transition discussion. I didn't even sit down. I walked into the HR glass box, one of those open-concept interrogation rooms they built to look transparent, but only served to amplify humiliation. Brandon was already there, leaned back in a mesh chair, sipping a protein shake that smelled like wet chalk and gym socks. Beside him sat Lindsay from HR, who always looked one passive-aggressive email away from a breakdown. "Hey, Brandon said, drawing it out like we were old pals. So look, been doing some hard evaluations of organizational impact and role redundancies, and honestly, this isn't personal. Translation, I need to look powerful, and you're the easiest scalp I can take without mommy calling me out. Lindsay slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside, severance terms, 2 weeks' pay, NDA. A smiley face sticker on the last page, like that made it feel less like an execution. We're pivoting to a more cloud-native architecture. Brandon went on as if he even understood what that meant. And frankly, a lot of your skill set overlaps with automated solutions we're exploring. ChatGPT, you know, I blinked. Once, twice, took a breath. Then said 6 words. What time is it right now? Lindsay glanced at her Apple Watch. 10:43, I nodded. Okay, that's all. Just okay. No theatrics. No begging. No arguments. You don't argue with a wildfire. Walk away and let it burn. Your badge has been deactivated, she added quickly, like ripping off a Band-Aid. Your access ends in 10 minutes. We'll have someone escort you back to your desk to collect your personal items. Brandon leaned forward, smirking. No hard feelings, right? You've been a real staple, like one of those old, reliable desk chairs. I said nothing, not even a nod. Just stared at him long enough for the grin to twitch. Then I stood up, turned toward the door, and paused just long enough to say, make sure whoever replaces me knows what SHA 256 chain is, and how to renew one. Brandon squinted, confused. Lindsay blinked like she was buffering. I left. No one escorted me. No one stopped me. I walked back to my desk, the same desk I'd sat at when this place ran on hand-me-down routers and prayers, and packed my things. A mug that said I void warranties, USB drive shaped like a middle finger, a half-eaten bag of trail mix. That was it. My terminal, I left it running, open to the log monitor, showing the certificate chain status green for now. Expiration countdown, 9 hours and 17 minutes. I unplugged my phone, slung my backpack over one shoulder, and walked out the door without turning around. They thought they were firing the help. What they actually did was fire the pilot mid-flight. Funny thing about systems no one understands. They run just fine until the one person who built them walks out. Flashback to 2011. The company had 6 employees and a dream, and I was sleeping under my desk with a screwdriver in one hand and a Red Bull Roman 4 in the other. We didn't have IT policies. We had duct tape and blind trust. So I built it all from scratch. Every subnet, every directory, every cert trust chain, every scheduled job that keeps the wheels greased and the wolves outside. We didn't use third-party junk back then. No plug-and-play cloud vendors. It was me, a bash shell, and enough caffeine to sedate a moose. And because the CEO didn't want to waste budget on security consultants, I became our security consultant. Self-taught, over-caffeinated, and probably legally insane by industry standards. But it worked. We needed authentication infrastructure. I hand-wrote a cert issuance process, self-signed at first, later upgraded to a proper internal CA. I tied it to our access controls and chained it down like a dragon under a mountain. Everything, internal tools, client-facing portals, automation scripts, third-party API calls, relied on those certs validating against a root issued by my admin profile. And nobody ever changed it, because they didn't need to, because I always handled it. Every 180 days, I'd renew the root. Every 90 days, the intermediates. Scripts triggered overnight to avoid downtime. Monitoring daemons watched for expiry flags. The renewal scripts all required elevated privileges. Privileges only my admin key had. You'd need a 5-step handshake just to see the config file. That's how tight I built it. I once offered to document it. CEO waved me off, the only one who understands that stuff anyway. I offered again after a near-miss outage 2 years ago. He said, if you get hit by a bus, we'll just figure it out. I wasn't hit by a bus. I was hit by Brandon. So when I left, the script stayed. The expiration timers ticked. The certs kept approaching midnight like it was Cinderella's funeral. And nobody in that building knew the carriage was about to turn into a flaming pumpkin. That night, I sat on my porch with a beer, watching lightning bugs and counting seconds. Somewhere around hour 6, my phone buzzed. DevOps Kyle, Brandon's flexing hard. Just told the team he decentralized legacy protocols and pushed some dev enablement scripts to production. No clue what you did here. But things are weird. He'll find out soon. I wasn't bluffing. Because those weird things, that was the system grumbling. Services randomly stalling. Cron jobs skipping execution. certificate chains failing silent checks that nobody knew were running. They were signs, warning lights on the dash before the engine seizes. I'd seen them once before, back when I fat-fingered a renewal script and nearly took out our QA environment. That screw-up nearly broke me. I never made it again. After that, I added a hidden flag in the root cert, an override lock. If the certificate wasn't renewed manually before midnight, chain would break and all auth-dependent services would go down. No auto-renew, no fallback. It was the nuclear option, buried deep beneath layers of convenience. I warned the CTO about it once back when I still believed someone cared. He nodded politely and went back to his Jira dashboard. So when Brandon fired me without asking a single question, without even glancing at a dependency map, I didn't panic. I let the timer run. The systems were still online, but they were running on borrowed time, like a car on fumes. Any dev worth their salt would have seen the alerts piling up, but Brandon had already alienated the only people who knew how to read logs without pictures. And as the minutes ticked closer to midnight, that lovely little flag I'd planted years ago waited silently. If no valid signature hit the renewal endpoint by 12 o'clock a.m., boom, dead certs, invalid chains, no logins, no internal tool access, no backend dashboard, no client auth, just access denied everywhere. I'd built the system like a heart. It beat because I told it to. And Brandon, he just pulled the plug on the pacemaker. It started with a hiccup, just a missed alert. Monday morning, 3:12 a.m., one of the nightly cron jobs failed to execute. Backup for the finance cluster didn't trigger. Usually, the alert system would ping DevOps. The SSL tunnel handshake didn't validate. So the monitor server shrugged and went quiet. No alert, just nothing. By 9 a.m., reports started trickling in. A client portal login timed out. A staging environment failed to deploy. Internal ticketing tools started loading like they were stuck in molasses. Brandon, of course, had no clue. He was too busy trying to add reaction GIFs to the Slack theme he renamed Bran Hub. By noon, engineering was in full panic mode, messages flying. Stand-ups turned into witch hunts. Anyone else seeing auth errors on the new builds? API response times are trash. Is Jenkins dead? I can't push to Git. One poor intern suggested it might be a certificate issue. Brandon clapped back so hard you'd think the guy keyed his Tesla. Don't spread paranoia. Certs auto-renew. That's basic IT hygiene. Jesus. Except they don't. Not without me. Brandon fired back in Slack. This smells like legacy tech debt. Who owned that before? Someone tagged me. Then remembered I was gone, then deleted the message. Meanwhile, Kyle from DevOps DM'd me again. Kyle, did you build the cert thing to break on purpose? Me, define break. Kyle, it's like the whole backend's held together with gum and prayers. Weird silent failures everywhere. Brandon's throwing laptops. Me, then yes, it's working as intended. He didn't reply after that. I didn't blame him. The ship was taking on water, and the only person who knew where the buckets were had been thrown overboard with a smile and a severance check. By Tuesday, marketing couldn't access campaign dashboards. Sales complained their CRM logins weren't syncing. One senior PM tried to escalate to Brandon and got told, "We're just seeing post-deployment turbulence." This is normal. Normal. All that to the backend team staring at a 403 wall every time they tried to deploy hotfixes. Or the QA engineer who cried when 3 hours of regression tests vanished because Jenkins couldn't verify the test environment's identity. Nothing could talk to anything. Trust was breaking down like a slow-motion demolition. But the countdown, still ticking. My last act before leaving had been planting a watchdog, just a simple bash script looping quietly in the background. If my cert wasn't renewed before midnight, it would log out every root process, invalidate active tokens, and fire off a cascade of fail-deny events tied to authentication layers across our stack. They wouldn't see the nuke, just the lights flickering, then fading. Brandon, meanwhile, went full tantrum. Accused the DevOps lead of silo hoarding. Claimed our external partners were sabotaging integrations. Told HR he was considering legal action against the previous sysadmin, me, for withholding tribal knowledge. As if I hadn't offered to document the whole thing for years. Someone found my folder, Root CA Renewal Guide PDF. Too bad it was encrypted. Password hint should have asked me. By Wednesday night, error logs read like obituaries. Services dying quietly, one by one, but no alarms blared, no fire drills, because the monitoring system that was supposed to scream couldn't authenticate anymore. And me? I was in a diner 2 states away, eating greasy waffles with my phone on Do Not Disturb, watching the system flicker from green to yellow to blood red. Brandon thought the kingdom would keep running without the steward, but castles rot fast when no one's there to oil the hinges. It hit like a guillotine. 12:00:03 a.m., the root cert expired. 12:00:08, every handshake failed. 12:00:12, internal tokens invalidated. By 12:01, the company's digital nervous system flatlined. From the outside, it looked like a server hiccup, nothing dramatic. But to those inside the beast, it was as if the floor vanished. Users couldn't log in. API calls returned nothing but cold rejection. Dev environments refused to spin up. Internal dashboards hung in stasis, spinning loading wheels like digital rosaries. Across 6 time zones, engineers sat frozen in front of unresponsive terminals, staring at error messages they hadn't seen since onboarding. Certificate validation failed. Root trust not established. 403, access denied. The air in Slack turned to static. At 12:07 a.m., Brandon was yanked out of bed by a call from the on-call lead. He let it go to voicemail. Then came the second call, the third. By the fourth, he answered, voice groggy, half-drunk, hair a mess. What the hell is going on? Silence. Then the engineer, voice brittle, said, we're locked out. Brandon barked, so log back in, you're engineers, just fix it. We can't, came the flat reply, we don't have the credentials. No one does. That's when the screaming started, not anger. Panic. Brandon kicked off a Zoom war room from his kitchen, shirtless and swearing. Half the engineering team joined from bedrooms, garages, hospital waiting rooms. People trying to triage what looked like a hostile takeover. Except there was no attacker. There was no virus. There was no breach. The system just stopped trusting anyone. The devs dug through everything, recovery keys, old scripts, orphaned backup accounts. But every process looped back to the same point of failure. The expired root certificate tied to my admin profile, heartbeat of the entire platform, and no one left alive with a stethoscope. Someone muttered, did anyone know this was coming? Someone else, I thought this stuff auto-renewed. Another voice, who used to handle this? Brandon unmuted, voice trembling now. What about the backup certs? We had redundancies, right? A tired DevOps engineer replied, all chained back to the same root. Reset it. Brandon snapped, we can't. You can't reset a trust system from the outside. Root, and that's gone. There was a pause, long and horrible. Then someone asked, did anyone check the renewal process? Another engineer replied, it was tied to a manual script, required admin credentials to execute. Last update said it had to be run before expiration. Who had access? The screen was quiet, faces lit by cold monitors, blinking, thinking, processing. And then someone said it, soft but clear. She did. No one said my name, they didn't have to. The logs were already betraying them. Clean, time-stamped entries up until 10:43 p.m. My final logout. A polite little line, info root CA status, valid until 00:00:00. Now it was 12:22 a.m., and all they had left were ghosts. Brandon's face turned the color of milk left out in the sun. Nope. Someone call legal. We're not going down over a tech issue. But it wasn't just a tech issue. It was the issue. Every contract, every service-level agreement, every audit clause, all dependent on secure system continuity. Without a functioning cert infrastructure, they weren't just down, they were non-compliant. No logins, no clients, no contracts, and Brandon had inherited the kingdom, but not the keys. All he could do now was scream at doors that wouldn't open. By 1:17 a.m., Brandon had gone full rabid raccoon, frothing, pacing barefoot through the office like his dad's name alone could scare the servers back to life. Use a backup admin, he shouted at the security engineer, who looked like he aged 10 years in the past hour. We did. All admin accounts are federated under the same cert chain. Then create a new cert. You can't sign a new root when the trust anchor is invalid. It's like asking a ghost to notarize your birth certificate. Brandon spun around and flung a stress ball across the war room. It bounced off the espresso machine he'd installed last week, labeled Innovation Fuel Station, and rolled under the table. Outside the glass walls, the rest of the office glowed red with error monitors. Half the employees were slumped in chairs, eyes bloodshot, watching dashboards full of screaming metrics. System downtime, login failures, client-side errors, cascading alerts. Internal platforms were useless, CRMs offline, customer support chat dead. No one could even access payroll. It was a digital extinction event. and the rest of the world was starting to notice. By 2:06 a.m., 3 of the company's top-paying clients had issued formal breach of contract notices. Legal teams were circling like vultures. One client threatened to revoke licensing entirely if services weren't restored by noon. Another threatened to pursue damages, citing 7-figure SLA penalties. At 2:32 a.m., a tech reporter tweeted, hearing chatter about a massive platform outage. Root cert issue, whole system deadlocked, developing, retweets exploded. The tweet storm hit Reddit by 3 a.m., then started trending on LinkedIn with the headline, "What happens when you fire the only person who knows how your skeleton is wired?" Meanwhile, Brandon kept trying to regain control like a drunk pilot punching buttons in a burning cockpit. At 3:11 a.m., an engineer finally found it. A log file buried deep in the backup audit directory. File name, Final Log Access 1043 PMTXT inside. 2 lines. Info Manual Certificate Renewal authorized by Admin root at Company Local Info System Access, compliant, and operational as of 10:59 p.m. No more entries after that. Brandon read the log out loud like it was a foreign language. What does that even mean? The lead engineer replied flatly, "Means she knew this was coming. She left the system healthy. We let it expire." A younger dev chimed in, she told us. "I remember her asking last year if we wanted her to document cert renewal protocols." We laughed. Another voice, barely above a whisper, she warned Brandon, right before she left. "Remember." Brandon looked around, face blank like the universe had personally betrayed him. Then he did what all legacy failures do when they realize they're out of depth. He pivoted to blame. "This is sabotage," he hissed. "She planned this. It's criminal." But the room was already peeling away from him. No one nodded. No one backed him. They didn't love me, but they trusted me. And when everything else collapsed, trust was the last thing standing. Someone pulled up Slack archives from the week before I left. The timestamp. The message, me. Make sure whoever replaces me knows what SHA 256 chain is. They didn't. And now here they were, locked out of their own house, watching the walls crumble from the sidewalk. At 3:27 a.m., legal joined the war room. The head of legal didn't sit. Just stood in the doorway holding a folder with trembling hands. "We're exposed," she said quietly. "Have until morning to re-establish trust systems or we're in breach. Our entire infrastructure is unverifiable." Brandon stammered, "So what do we do?" She looked him dead in the eye and said the one sentence that sealed his fate, "We need her." Silence. Then, barely audible, someone whispered, "And we fired her." The room went still. Not silent like peace. Silent like a power outage. Like the moment before a building caves in. Because that was the moment they all realized. This wasn't just a tech failure. This was a betrayal of competence, of stewardship, of every quiet act of protection I'd done for 15 years while they treated me like furniture. And now the furniture had left, and taken the floor with it. 4:09 a.m. Emergency board session, called with all the urgency of a sinking ship trying to duct tape the hull. They gathered in the top floor war room. Glass coffin perched above a skyline they could no longer monitor because the real-time dashboard was bricked. Half the board joined via video, hastily awakened by calls from legal, PR, and one terrified VP whose entire bonus now hung on a heartbeat monitor reading no signal. The CEO entered last, still in his golf slacks. Shirt wrinkled, no tie, just rage. He didn't sit. He walked in like a man headed to a funeral, and where he suspected the killer was sitting in the pews. What the hell happened? He asked no one in particular, though the entire room flinched like they'd been shot. Legal spoke first. Calm, deadly, no sugar. Our systems are offline due to certificate expiry. Root credentials were tied exclusively to one profile. That profile was deactivated. Restore from backup, the CEO snapped. Impossible, legal replied. All automated certs require an unbroken trust chain. No trust, no authentication. Backups won't verify. We can't even get into the vault. Someone tried to breathe too loudly and was met with death stares. We are in breach, legal continued. 3 major clients have filed notices. One is seeking immediate restitution. Another has paused all invoice payments. And the third is already negotiating migration away from us. How long until we're compliant again? The CEO asked, slow, like the words hurt to form. Eagle looked at the floor. Then the board, then him, if she helps us. Maybe by noon, and if she doesn't, then we start the quarter with no platform, no clients, and no reputation. Silence. Then someone muttered it, barely a whisper. She warned us. Another voice joined, I remember. She asked about documentation. Said it needed to be done before end of Q2. We laughed, someone else admitted. The CEO's eyes shifted to Brandon, who sat there pale, sweaty, trying to look composed while failing epically. She didn't include any of this in her offboarding, Brandon said. That's gross negligence. We should pursue legal action. She sabotaged, she offered to document, someone interrupted. She did document, legal added, encrypted. Offered the password during exit, you dismissed her. I didn't think, no, the CEO said, voice sharp as ice. You didn't. Brandon swallowed, tried to pivot. We just need to get her on a call. Offer her a consultancy rate, or bring her back. She'll come back, she has to. No, the CEO said again. You don't get to fix this. But Dad, stop. He said it like a guillotine drop. Like Brandon had just used up the last breath of nepotism left in the building. You fired the backbone of this company because you wanted to feel like a boss, he said. You turned my company into a LinkedIn circus. Now you're sitting here begging to reverse time. Brandon's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. The CEO turned back to legal. Find her. Ask what it takes. Yes, sir. And Brandon? His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Effective immediately, you're no longer authorized to make any system decisions. You've cost us millions. He didn't yell. He just walked out. And that hurt worse. Brandon sat motionless, face like wet ash, watching the door swing closed behind the father who finally saw through him. For the first time since he swaggered into that office with his baby startup lingo and half-read business books, Brandon looked small. Because in that room, filled with lawyers, execs, and half-lit screens still echoing access denied, one thing was finally, brutally clear. The only person who could fix it was the one they thought they didn't need. The call came in at 5:12 a.m. Unknown number, Ohio area code. Straight to voicemail. I watched the screen light up once, twice, then a text, please, it's urgent, we need you. No name, no emojis, just desperation wearing a polite mask. I put the phone back down next to my mug. The coffee had gone lukewarm, but the sky was starting to bruise with sunrise, streaks of blood orange across a horizon that didn't care one bit about expiring certs or ego-drunk failsons. I rocked back slowly in my chair and listened to the wind roll through the trees. Somewhere, a bird chirped. Somewhere downtown, another server pinged itself uselessly, wondering why no one trusted it anymore. At 7:03 a.m., the courier arrived. Unmarked SUV. Kid in a company hoodie I'd never seen before, holding a black folder like it contained national secrets. His hands were shaking. Ma'am, they said to give this to you directly. Inside, a reinstatement offer. Executive level. Salary tripled. Handwritten note from the CEO. This company is broken without you. I see that now. Please help us rebuild. There was also a check, with more zeros than common sense. And a clause at the bottom, fresh from legal. All prior terminations considered nullified retroactively. Full clearance restored upon your approval. I closed the folder slowly, like it might bite me. Didn't say a word to the courier. Just handed it back to him and nodded toward the road. Did I tell them anything? He asked, voice small. Yeah, I said, standing up. Tell them trust isn't something you reboot, it's something you protect. He nodded, eyes wide, then scurried off like he'd just delivered a prophecy. By noon, word leaked. Brandon was gone, officially resigned. Unofficially thrown out so fast his keycard didn't get time to say goodbye. No farewell memo, no LinkedIn post. Just a ghosted login and a rumor he tried to blame legacy entropy. It didn't matter, the board had seen the receipts. The CEO had read the log files, and the engineers, they stopped saying my name like a threat, started saying it like a shield. I never went back, never logged in again, never reset a single cert. They had to rebuild the system from scratch. Without me, as they should. Final scene, I'm back on the porch, fresh cup of coffee in hand. Sweatpants, slippers, silence. The sun creeps over the horizon like it's got nowhere better to be. Downtown, past the hills and the train tracks, I can still see the glow of the data center. Flickering, trying, but still somehow dark. I take a sip, smirk, and whisper to no one in particular should have asked me. Then I close my eyes and finally rest. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.